Thank you everyone for attending this My Conclave session on startup culture vis-a-vis the MNC culture. And it's really important for students to understand the culture in MNCs and startups so that they can take an call choosing which culture it fits them. So this topic is very relevant for our students. And to take this conversation forward, I would like to introduce the panel first. And before taking questions and going ahead with the conversation, the first panelist with me today is Captain Pranav Thakur. Captain Pranav is an ex-Indian Army officer, and he's an alumnus of IIM Lucknow with 17 years of extended experience in human resources management and development. Currently, he's heading HR at Renault India, and previously he worked at the Renault National as the head of talent and training. And Captain Thakur has also written books, and he has published novels like Those Unknown and Fallen Few. Please give a round of applause to our captain.
Thank you.
And the next panelist with us is Mr. Sujitesh Das. Mr. Das loves exploring next horizons and frontiers, raising the bar in people experience and process excellence. Currently, he is Chief Operating Officer and Chief Human Resources Officer at Teg Analytics. And he is also a Chief Wisdom Officer at PickMind.com. Previously, he has worked with MNCs like Microland, Cognizant, and HCL. He has taught at several places, several IIMs, IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Sambalpur, IIM Kosipur, and few others, and of course at our beloved MICA. And he's an alumnus of Accelerate Jamshedpur. Guys, please give a round of applause to our next panelist, Sujitesh Das. And the third panelist is we have young Rima Saab. Rima is a new gen young millennial and who is working as a head HR with KC Roasters. She is an active HR consultant also with Jolis Birla Company, Woodside Inn, and Brief. She has also been awarded for her exemplary performance as bringing the Yes Promise of Service to life at Yes Bank Limited, and she has been the first intern to receive this honor. Rima also teaches at the Mumbai Education Trust. So thank you panel members for coming to MICA and attending and interacting with the students. So the first questions I would like to ask is Captain Pranav Thakur. And Captain has worked extensively with MNCs for the last 17 years. And my question is primarily over the years we have seen MNCs have been a vertical culture, because as a senior executive, you probably would report to the upwards, you report to the top management or maybe the board of directors, but downward there will be a lot of people reporting to you. So the structure is kind of vertical, and that has been existence over the years. But of late, there is so much of changes which is coming in with the new gen startups, new companies, as Thomas Friedman coined the term called flattening out, because the geographical boundaries has minimized. And the technology has got a lot of changes, and more about that we'll talk about going ahead. But predominantly, as you can know, there is so much of shift in the organization. So do you think the vertical culture, vertical organizational culture of hierarchy and etc. will continue, or it is going to flatten out?
Thank you, sir. I'll just extend the thing on culture a little bit, and then I'll come to the vertical structure. The first thing is what I feel is the culture. It starts with an insignia, which is a logo or a tagline. And further to that, there is a vision, mission which commands the thing. So how you conduct the business inside the company. So that's what it is, an extended version of only not only the hierarchical structure. So that is what. With the current changes and in the workforce post the pandemic and pre-pandemic, with the new generation coming into picture, we all are in love with something called freedom of execution. And these hierarchical structure is quite a bottleneck there. So what I strongly feel, and it is already organizations are working on that, that cabin structure, the glass doors, it has been replaced. The free communication between the leadership team and the employees very much executed. And if an organization feels or wants to transcend into a culture of making that free culture inside the organization, if an organization commits to that, then this hierarchy has to be shaken up, and as I say that it has to be made non-hierarchical, right? So anyone wants to communicate, there should be a freedom of conduct in the organization. This is what I feel, and yes, as you mentioned, this thing will be an obsolete thing, and the free flowing organization will be the future, is what I feel it. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Maybe the second question I would like to ask Rima. So, I mean, you worked with the startup and you understand the startup side of it. So, what is the organizational culture specific to startups?
Alright, so I think organizational culture at startups has a lot to do with your roots. Like, why have you established it? What is the reason behind it? What change are you wanting to bring in? It has a lot to do with your founder, his characteristics, his principle, his values, and followed by the kind of, as an HR, how do you envision that and bring a resource to the company? Because when you're a startup company, you definitely go through a lot of, your cash flow is tight some days you do not have the budget to hire from MICA or hire from, top talents. So what do you do when you come across such kind of situations? Then as an HR, you try to connect it to your organizational values, maybe by giving a little more importance to the word ability and lesser to technical skills, and rather compensating it with self-learning. That's what you are when you are a startup company. And most importantly, in a startup, you allow your employees to actually have an open door, innovate themselves, go and come up with ideas and execute them, rather than having them crawl through a cat flap. I think that's what a lot startups deal with.
Thank you, Rimaji. And the next question I like to ask third panelist Sujitesh. Sujitesh, you have worked in MNCs for a quite bit of part of your career, and the last few years have been working with a successful startup. Having worked with both these MNCs and startup, what is the general difference between working in these two types of category of organizations?
Yeah. So thanks, Professor Rao. So I would actually consider that this is an and, right? So it's not like a or, with that multinationals, you have a certain way of working and a certain culture, and startups should have a prescribed way of doing things. I would say two things. One is, your employees, whatever you're communicating, the vision and mission or the meaning, purpose, are they addressing the call of duty? And second is that, are you putting a good team play that's ultimately winning the goal and hitting the targets, right? I'd like to take an analogy to a table tennis play, or a lawn tennis court, or to go to the football playground, right? It's always a play of a bat and a ball, and the idea is to keep the ball or to score the goal. And look at the table tennis and the lawn tennis stuff as a startup, and then maybe a next stage of the startup, compared to a football playground where you've a little more evolved, and you have to give the room and the structure, have a procedure, process, guidelines, and ultimately deliver performance or win the goals. So I would say that while there are certain nuances or guidelines, it's a healthy mix of process, structure, flexibility, and agility. And remember that whether it's multinationals, established organizations, they were once a startup, right? And it's not something that is getting copied, but at the same time, I think I'm more keen on what's going to happen in the future, where there's going to be multicultural stuff, not just in terms of geography and the diversity, but in terms of just the workers' revolution that I foresee. Yeah.
Wonderful. So the next question probably I'll ask any one of you to answer, and maybe a few things I would like to say before moving into the next question is, as you say, culture and brands are probably two sides of the same coin, because you are referring to the external opinion and suggestion, it's the brand, how people perceive it. But the internal brand is the culture the organization builds in, isn't it? So so of course with the pandemic and everything has gone for a toss. People are working remotely, working from homes. How do you think that culture aspect actually has to be maintained, because that's your internal brand? So even though you're an MNC or a startup, how do you perceive and to adapt to these changes into work from anywhere and work from wherever you are, kind of culture which has crept in the last few years because of the virus?
Can I take it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I feel is, see, the thing is simple. Culture cannot be made in a single day. So even in the time of pandemic, when we talk about, and if I have to bat for the MNCs, so the culture was in existence since quite some time. So what at the time of pandemic, what I feel, if the purpose of the employee was connected to the purpose of the company, right, there is an integrity which has been defined, right? And even a pandemic or maybe a lockdown or whatever it is cannot shake it, because the employees will be dedicated and their resolve will be for the betterment and the efficiency of the company, the targets and whatever the metrics which is there for the well-being of the organization. So if the purposes are connected, there is no problem. Now if the purposes are not connected and we are talking in some pseudo culture and pseudo engagement, the way many organizations we have seen during the pandemic taking various drastic decisions, then there is a problem. And it is not only, it shows that how you conduct yourself with the employees, it also shows to the customer that how it will be internally, if you are not doing the right thing, how externally you will do the right thing. So this is what I strongly feel is the pandemic was just a reflection. The core was already in existence, and those organizations which spend enough time and energy in doing that, they were quite relishing it, the things were completely fine. Those organizations who did not focus on the culture before and they wanted to create a culture at the time of pandemic, they all failed. So this is what my feeling.
I think adding just a little bit more to this, when we speak about two sides of the coin and when we are also trying to focus on employer branding, the word inclusion plays a very significant role. I mean, a lot of companies would say that, yeah, we follow diversity, but do you include it? How do you include it? How it is, a part of your organization plays a greater importance in creating a culture. Sometimes we would say that, yeah, we hire across the globe, but then on a particular day, if you're not, it's a new year, and if there is no leave given, then you're not celebrating diversity, So how do you actually include it in an organization is a major part of your culture today.
Yeah, I would say that the pandemic brought the focus on digital to a large extent, and whether there was a saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, whether digital is now eating culture for breakfast. But having said that, while the physical things have got blurred, there have been instances where people have done a great job about it and retained a culture, but that could not have been built during the pandemic. It would have been what has come out in the past. I would say the critical differentiator would be the one between whether the human experiences was getting digitized or whether we are humanizing the digital experience. I think that's going to be the difference between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic on the culture aspect.
Thank you everyone for a wonderful conversation, and thank you for coming to MICA. It was a pleasure hosting you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Done.
Nobody has put said a cut.
Yeah, cut.
Cut to bolo.